Thanks for joining me. Today we're going to talk about why and in what situations a double closing might be a better solution for a wholesale deal. So oftentimes we think about with wholesaling, we think about, man, we want to do a single close, right? Because then you're not paying closing fees twice. You're not paying fees when you buy it, and then you're not paying fees again when you turn around and sell it. Oftentimes that double close, it cuts into your wholesale profit. And it requires that you have the cash to close on the first closing before the buyer comes in and closes on the second closing and you get your wholesale fee. So I hope you're following me here. But there are some situations where a double closing is in fact better. And I'll give a situation of when that's the case. So sometimes when you're wholesaling, your end buyer, your buyer that you're wholesaling to, usually an investor, they have an issue with your wholesale fee. Now, I found that if it's $3,000 or $4,000, maybe $5,000, they're fine with that. They don't really have an issue with that. At a single closing, the buyer always knows your fee. They always know how much you make because it's part of the single close. You're getting paid right out of that closing. On a double close, you don't disclose how much you're making because the buyer is just coming for their closing on their purchase. They don't see what you bought it for that just happened in the first closing, 10 minutes earlier if it's a back-to-back closing. So there are situations where I will do a double close specifically so I don't have to disclose to my buyer how much I made on the deal. And these are wholesales that range from usually $8,000, $9,000, $10,000, $12,000. I really don't want my buyer knowing that I'm making $12,000 on the deal. Not because I shouldn't make $12,000, not because the price they're buying it for is a bad deal. It's got nothing to do with any of that. It has to do with that buyer having an issue with you making that much money, which I have a hard time with because if they're willing to pay the price you're bringing it to them for and what you've negotiated, then who cares if you bought it for $1 or $10 or $100,000 or whatever. As long as they're getting the deal for the number they need to get it for, everybody should be happy. The reality is a lot of buyers, they don't like to see you make that much money. It's just hard for them. They think somehow they got ripped off or they're not getting a good deal or they should have paid less. Those things come up. I actually was at a closing where we're sitting at the closing, a single closing. I was making $12,000 on the wholesale deal, and the buyer, as soon as he saw it, he was ticked. His face went red. He said, "You're making $12,000 on this deal?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he said, I'm upset. And he sat back and he folded his arms and he said, "You're ripping me off." And I said, "Well, wait a second. You're buying it for the price that you agreed to. If I was only making $1,000, you're still paying the same. What would you care then?" And so we had this dialogue, and I actually had to take a discount on my wholesale fee, give him a few $1,000s less on the purchase just to get the transaction closed. And right then and there, I vowed, okay, I'm not going to get stuck in this situation again. So anytime I do wholesale deals that are usually over $7,000 or $8,000 is my profit on the deal, I will specifically do a double closing, even though I know I'm going to pay some closing fees to do that double close and have to come up with the cash to the deal. It's still better to get the deal done. So keep that in mind. Maybe you've had that happen to you. If you haven't, trust me, go in there, go to the closing with a deal where you're making $10,000 or more, and you'll learn firsthand what I'm talking about. It will happen. So that's my tip for today. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next time.